All right, welcome everybody to the Brits Are Coming panel here at the 30th Annual Arizona International Film Festival. My name is Stacey Cochran, and I'm absolutely honored and grateful to be moderating this panel today with an outstanding lineup of British filmmakers. On the line right now, we have Martha Tilston, who is the director of The Tape. We have Kirsty Bell, who is the producer director of A Bird Flew In, and Neil Mcenery-West, director of Asylum. Thank you all for joining us here. I know it's really late for you, so I hope you have a cup of coffee and or a cup of tea and ready to go. So let's get started just with some introductions. Tell us a little bit about your film and what it's like to see it, in front of audiences finally after, I would imagine, a very long journey to get here. And Neil, if you'd like to get us started, go right ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I lost you there for a second. Yeah. So, hi. So, yeah, my name's Neil. I'm the writer and director of Asylum, which is a short 12-minute film, which is about. It's kind of set in it's kind of set contemporary, modern day, but it's a bit like The Man in the High Castle in that it's a kind of alternate version of now. And in a world where borders are kind of closed off and militarized, and it's really about the relationship between a woman that lives in a windmill quite near the coast, who stumbles across the body of an unconscious woman on the beach and takes her home, a great risk to herself, and kind of nurses her back to health. And it's about sort of the story of this relationship with this woman and this illegal immigrant who sort of washed up on the shore and trying to reconnect her with the family. And yeah, sorry, in relation to the other part, yeah, I mean, it's one of those stories which I've had kicking around for years and I've wanted to do, and it's really nice just to finally have actually made it, and it's lovely just to have people seeing it now. There was a great group of people that came together to make it, and it was a story that felt really relevant when we started producing it, because already we're in the middle of the immigrant crisis, but obviously now with things as they are at the moment in the world, that's just kind of snowballing even further. So it's nice to be able to. What I really wanted to do was to create a kind of humanistic perspective on that, and just to kind of make a story that was about what makes us similar and what connects us as people, rather than the kind of politicized way that sort of immigration can sometimes be used as a weapon, and used to the detriment of the people involved.
I absolutely love it. Yeah, anything that can bring in a little bit of social drama, for me, that's really right up my alley and my taste as a writer. And so that's awesome. So what kinds of responses have you gotten to that particular aspect of the issue? Have you had people saying this has made them think about immigration in a different way and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, there's been a lot of positive response to it, which has been lovely. There has been some negative response, not to the film as such, but just to the idea of kind of putting a human face on the issue. Obviously we're in the UK at the moment. We're quite a kind of torn country politically, I think, as well. So that doesn't help for that. But no, it's been generally really positive. And in fact, on Friday, I'm heading down to Kent, where they've got a festival which is sort of focused around issues of immigration and asylum seekers. And there's my film, and there's another guy who's actually who is an asylum seeker who's lived in the country for a few years now, who made a documentary. And we're both showing those films and then sort of doing a Q&A panel on it there. And it's just lovely that it's getting talked about a bit more, and that it's sort of in the public consciousness in a way that isn't just being fed through the news or being fed through politicians, but actually talks about the real life difficulties of the people that are that are being displaced and being forced to move from their country, their homeland, to somewhere else, who ultimately I think need to be supported. And it's nice to put that kind of perspective on it. So yeah, it's been really good. It's been really gratifying in that sense.
I'm sure other panelists might have a question or two to jump in on as well, but I do want to turn the floor over to Martha Tilston, who is the director of The Tape. Tell us a little bit about The Tape and your journey to bring this to fruition.
So I just finished touring, and I'm a singer-songwriter as well, and I'd made a music documentary, and this idea just came to me of this story of this girl who is essentially, she's Cornwall's worst cleaner, and she gets a job cleaning an empty second home, which is what we have a lot of down here, not enough first homes. And she's, you know, disillusioned songwriter, and she finds this house. She can't find anywhere to live. She kind of moves in. She finds a piano and she finds a 4-track recorder and secretly records an album in the house. And then the owner comes back and she meets him and certain things happen. And so it's kind of a romance, but it's also looking at social issues, I guess, with housing and what we're having down here in Cornwall. But on a wider scale, it also looks at our effect on the tide down here with like the plastics and pollution. And I weave mythology down, you know, throughout the film, especially down here in Cornwall. It's quite normal to pop to the pub and like the old boys will just start dropping in about mermaids, you know. It's like it's so part of the fabric of the earth and the moors and the heather and the stone and the granite and the rocks down here, and I really wanted to get that in. And also I really wanted, I think the idea of just weaving in a little bit of magic realism and with the selkie, and just to throw open the possibility of the miraculous, because at the moment it feels like we're always fed how things are going to mess up, right? You know, we kind of, Armageddon's covered. We've covered it from every angle. And I just wanted to have something where maybe we suggest the miraculous could happen. Yeah, so coming into fruition, I just knew I needed to write it, I needed to make it, just knew it. And then I had the crazy idea that because I act as when I write and I sing, I thought, well, what if I play Tally and I actually record the songs that she's recording in the moment that it's recorded, just to put a bit extra pressure on. But I really like, especially now when digital recording, you can make everything perfect. I really wanted, what if in that moment that I'm playing her and she feels like she feels inspired to sing and I sit down to play, what if that is the actual song we hear on the soundtrack for the album, for the film? And so we did that. We hid my producer away. We had another feed from the microphone. He was hidden away in the house. And so we were recording it real time, and it sort of added a real sort of beauty, raw, clunky. So yeah, that's the film. It's called The Tape, and yeah, it's been a really magical experience. I've had an incredible team, absolutely incredible team, and it's just flowed. It's been hard work, but it's flowed. You know, some projects you feel like you're pushing the wheel and it jams, but this one just, it kept rolling and people came on board, and the response has been just, incredible for a crazy little folk musical set in Cornwall.
So how did you prepare yourself for that very spontaneous singing performance? Or how did you prepare yourself for that?
Well, I kind of got the songs up as practiced as I could. But the good thing about being in characters, your ego kind of has to go out of the room. So I kind of just was in the moment, and just letting go of perfection, which is the nicest thing to do as an artist. And yeah, I'm just so glad I did it that way, actually. Yeah, it just feels, I can feel, you know, the character Tally isn't a million miles away from me. She has slightly curlier hair and that's about it, really. But so I kind of felt like I could climb into her quite easily, and I just really enjoyed the moments of recording. I loved the one take thing. I loved it.
It's beautiful. And our last filmmaker, producer, director, a jack of all trades in the filmmaking industry, to be sure, Kirsty Bell, who is the producer director of A Bird Flew In. So tell us a little bit about A Bird Flew In, Kirsty.
A Bird Flew In is not that indifferent to Martha and Neil's projects. It's something that's been born out of reality or a real situation. So A Bird Flew In is, the analogy is that if a wild bird flies into your house, how does it react when the door's shut behind it? So that's what we all had to go through when the pandemic hit us. And we basically shut our doors, and all of us had to look at ourselves or not look at ourselves, depending on who we are and what makes us tick. So in my own instance, I was driving back from a set that had to wrap a week and a half early on the evening of the announcement of the lockdown. And all of a sudden, pardon my language, I went, shit, I'm driving back home. I'm going to close. My husband's stuck in Australia. What the hell am I going to do? And then this happened. The Zoom thing happened, which I'd never been party to. I used to meet people and talk to people and things like that. And I was busy doodling because I'm a doodler. And I used to doodle about, I wonder what's happening in their house. And I wonder what's happening in their house. And started making it these amalgamation of characters. And I was talking to somebody today, and I said there was about 18 eventually that ended up on bits of paper and all the rest of it. And we whittled them down to 14 and then whittled them down to 12. And I did not think I'd written a film. And that's not what my objective was. I was observing, like we all are now, to me and I with you. And it was more of a case of human emotion. What I wanted to explore with myself was human emotion, because the first time in my life I had to stop still effectively. So it was about me just jotting down ideas. So long story short, I sent pictures of my doodles to the executive producer on the film, and he phoned me up within 6 minutes and went, darling, this is a film, you need to write it. And I said, I'm not a writer, I don't know how to write. So we put the team together, and I had a very, very good producer in Ben Charles Edwards, who I've worked with before. He's a director and a producer. I was a producer. I wasn't a director at all, and I definitely wasn't a writer. And we put it together, and we were the first drama to film coming out of lockdown. And to echo what Martha said, it was the most amazing experience I think I've ever had in my career in film, and a very, very different experience to what I'd ever had before. Acting in it too was like a bit of a side swipe, a bit of a left field thing. And what we hope we've done and what the reaction to it has been is very much that people, when they see it, they sit still at the end of the film, because we've actually touched part of whatever they went through. And bear in mind, we made it after the first lockdown in the UK, not the second or the third. We thought that was the end. We didn't think there was an ongoing thing. So it's a bit, you know, like, how the hell do you release a film like that when it's still all going on? It's like stuck. It's like stuck in its own energy and its own history. But luckily, we are living with what's left of the pandemic, and this film is about 12 people who either cope or don't cope or try to cope. So that's my little film, A Bird Flew In.
Absolutely beautiful, and I think it's something we can all relate to. Yeah, this Zoom world is, I'm ready for it to be done, but I don't know that it's ever going to be done. It seems like we have gotten here. To me, the most disarming thing about it is there's this image of me up here, and I don't want to see a picture of me as I'm talking to other people. You know, so it is sort of strange, right? In that way.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we did in the film, Stacey, is we tried to ignore devices. There's hardly any computer imagery or anything like. It'd be very easy to comp in on computers and all the rest of it. Yeah. But what we concentrated on was what was in here, and what was in here, and how they related to each other. For those 12 people who went through it, and I have to say, the actors really embraced it, like called themselves the names of the characters, really got into it. You know, what would such and such do next? Let's discuss. And that to me was the most cathartic and beautiful experience. And I'm just pleased like people like your good selves want to watch it and want to see it, because that's what I wanted people to do.
It's wonderful. So my next question, you could follow up with this, Kirsty, or toss it over to Neil, or we could thumb wrestle for it via Zoom somehow. But how did telling your story, how did it change your view of the issue that sort of is at the heart of the story? And Neil, why don't you get us started? Maybe we'll come back to Kirsty after that.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I mean, I guess for Asylum, when I started writing it, it was partly a reaction, like I said, to the way that sometimes the whole issue of immigration can be kind of politicized and sometimes weaponized, you know, against public consciousness. And I guess so, in a way, when I was approaching it, I didn't want it to be too much of a polemic. I didn't want it to be too sort of, you know, too preachy in any way. So I was very conscious of that. And I guess what really struck me when we were making it, especially when I was working with the actors, I was really lucky. I had some lovely actors to work with. Was that it's just like any other story, really. When it comes down to it, it's just about characters, and it's about human relations, and it's about the kind of the interaction and the relationships that form. So in a way, when we started making it, I almost sort of forgot what it was about to some degree, quite often, more often than I thought I was going to anyway. And it became very much about just a relationship between these two women. And yeah, and also, I mean, as a counterpoint to that, you know, at the times when I was reminded of the kind of more political aspects of it, it was just really nice to be telling a story that was hopeful, that had a positive quality to it. So even though it was kind of set in this fairly dystopic kind of world, it was very much about, you know, it was about these people coming together and helping each other despite everything that's going on around them in the infrastructure of the world that they exist in. So that was really nice. I didn't expect it to leave me with quite such a warm, fuzzy feeling as it did when I was initially writing it. But it was nice to go through that when we were making it together. And I think, you know, none of us really knew each other that well, so it was quite a nice bonding experience as well. It was only really the producer that I knew really well from working on other stuff together. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure this has been said loads of times. It's probably the same. I'm sure it's the same with horror as well, that, you know, you kind of get together to do a film, which in itself can be dealing with a fairly bleak subject, but strangely you end up having a wonderful time doing it and having lots of fun, which was unexpected. But that was probably the biggest surprise that came out of it, I think.
And Kirsty, what did you learn about the subject matter of your film, and how did it change you specifically? Or change your perspective on these relationships?
Completely changed me, to be quite honest. Ridiculously so, quite surprisingly so. What I learned through the process of A Bird Flew In was that out of adversity, something cathartic can happen. And it happened to the characters in the film. And by dint of that, it happened to me. And I never, ever would have classified myself as somebody who could have either come up with an idea or have directed a film. And the people around me, as Neil referenced for his short, supported me in such a way. And we all were concerned that, obviously, you know, we were the very first film, you know, people were learning by our COVID procedures. So we were actually living the pandemic as we were filming about the pandemic, which is a really bizarre situation to be in. But we joined together as a team, as you know, as you do on a film set. It becomes a family, all the rest of it. But the biggest lesson that I learned out of everything is that all of us should be kinder to each other in this world. None of us know what anybody actually went through unless you went through it yourself. So, and that was, I suppose, you know, myself and the producer Ben, we just wanted people to be kinder to each other. And I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned through making this film.
Similar question to you, Martha. If there's something about the story that you learned about these characters or the issue, what would you say? How have you changed as a result of telling the story?
So, yeah, similar actually to Kirsty. So much changed. Like I changed, and weirdly, so much is echoed now since from the film. I was looking for a house in Cornwall with my kids, and I was sat in the van and I was ringing up places going, have you got somewhere? And it suddenly thought, that's really familiar. And it was a scene from the film. You know, I've been finding mermaids' tears on the beach down here. We call them mermaids' tears, and they're like tiny spheres of plastic. Mythology, the Cornish mythology, you know, it's always been a bit of an interest to me, but it's just been getting really, really inside, the whole idea of changelings and selkies, and ultimately it's now sort of springboarded into the next film, which I'm taking further into actually daring to look into the future and what it might look like if we do rewild and look after the planet and look after each other. And yeah, it's changed me. It's changed loads of things, and I can't even begin to say. But yeah, I wasn't sure that we were wanting hope, or I knew we are in our deepest heart. Of course, we're wanting hope. We thrive on it. We've got to see it to be it, you know. But to make a film that is a love film, but essentially underneath I'm hiding loads of environmental kind of messages and whatever, and to put out that ends in a happy vibe. Yeah, it just feels like that was the right thing to do at the right time. But I've just have to say, I just was totally supported by Laura Giles and the producer and all the team, who were just incredible and made it happen.
Phenomenal. So for folks watching at home, the panelists today, Martha Tilston, director of The Tape, Kirsty Bell, producer director of A Bird Flew In, and Neil Mcenery-West, director of Asylum. So back to you, Martha, because you were anticipating what I was curious about, and that is, how did you assemble your team? And how important is it to you to have a team that knows one another well when making a film?
That's an interesting question. So none of us really knew each other well. I knew my producer, my music producer. I've run a band for many years and directed other things, but this was I got together with Laura Giles. I just told her the idea. She helps people come up with ideas, and she was just like, we've got to make that. And I was like, you know, it's just, you know, she was like, well, no, you need to make this, and maybe next year. And she was like, no, come on, get me this bit of the script by then, do that, you know. And it was just brilliant. And then it's just one of those things, I don't know, it's a bit like surfing. I can't believe we use surfing analogy, you're in Arizona, but anyway. But, you know, like sometimes you'll like be fighting the tide, or you'll be trying to catch a wave and it's just not happening. And then if it's the right wave, it'll just ride you in. And so many things fell into place, like this incredible Mary Farber, this incredible cinematographer. I don't know if you've seen the film, but she's just like, she's a dream. The color and the images and the framing and the light, and then just the whole team, just the way it all fell in, everything. The places I imagined in my head where I wanted to film it, that all the locations came up and they were available. It was just it was beautiful. I mean, I didn't know the team very well, but we all felt like family by the end. We kept it quite a relaxed, happy vibe. We were trying to be family friendly. There was lots of mums there. It turned out to be an all women heads of department, not by meaning to, just by that's how it happened. And it was really nice that was just the way it happened. Yeah, it was just, and we had an absolute laugh. And in the house where we filmed most of the, you know, we filmed a lot of it on location out on the cliffs and whatever, but all the house scenes, we all stayed over in this big house on the edge of the cliff. So it was kind of like film camp. So it was great. We all got to know each other really well. Yeah.
So much fun. So much fun. And part of what's driving the question is I've worked on a couple of film projects now and have seen the difference when you have a director who, you know, is pretty new to their entire crew, in contrast to if they've worked with the writer, the producer, their lead actors, their editor, production designer, all these sorts of things. If they kind of know one another, they can kind of intuit a little bit about what the goal is. In a way, it's almost like a band that comes together. You know, they've been playing together. Yeah,
I would say that. Am I on mute? And I don't know if you can hear me. You can hear me, all right? Okay. Yeah, I would say that Lee Hart, who plays Leo opposite me, we were at drama school together, and quite a few of the actors I knew well, and we acted together well when we were younger, and it was really nice to come together again. Yeah, and I definitely would use a lot of the team again. It was magic. Yeah.
And Neil, similar question to you. Was it a pretty new team that you were working with, and how did you assemble the crew and the team around you?
Yeah, I mean, it was similar in many ways to what Martha was saying, really. I mean, I knew the producer, Dan Turner. I knew him very well. We worked together on a few things. And it was kind of a mixture. Some of the people I knew a little bit, some not. There weren't a huge amount of people I'd worked with before. One of the things that we did was, so I teach at a couple of film schools in between projects that I shoot, and every now and again, you know, we'll get kind of graduates coming through who are really good, and I like to try and keep in touch so that we can hopefully give them an opportunity if something comes up. So we ended up with, again, like Mother, we ended up with an almost entirely female-led set of heads of departments, which was just by chance, but they were just the best of the people that came out of the film schools that I'd stayed in touch with. And it was great. And it wasn't all students, I mean, all graduates. I mean, it was the two actors, the two lead actresses, they were people that I'd not worked with before and I'd not met, and they were lovely, and they came on board really quickly because they really liked the story. So that was really good. Yeah, but it was a bit like forming a bit of a new family. You know, it was probably the project with the least amount of people that I've known beforehand that I've ever done. So, but it was kind of fun in that way, I think, as well, because I mean, it wasn't a huge shoot. It was only sort of like 4 or 5 days, but it was nice sort of getting to know everyone in a very, as it always is on a film set, in a very sort of intense sort of period of time. But no, it was fun to work with. It was fun to work with them. But to be honest, I mean, also I think everyone wanted to go just because it was, you know, I imagine it would be like that down in Cornwall as well. It was just the environment. I think everyone was quite keen. We found this lovely little converted windmill in Kent, just down near Camber Sands, and it was just gorgeous. So, I mean, I think for some of them it was also the opportunity just to spend a couple of days somewhere nice, which was fun as well. So yeah, so it was good.
Awesome. And Kirsty, how about you? It sounds like, well, I got a follow-up question that I want to ask you in a moment, but tell me a little bit about how you assembled your team for A Bird Flew In.
Well, ours is entirely different, unfortunately, to Neil and Martha's story. We obviously, we still had lots of COVID rules and everything, and I would love to say that we all went and hired a house somewhere and all could stay there and everybody could live together, but no, we had bubbles on set. We had and obviously I know a lot of people from being a producer, but they never knew me as a director, so they were taking a leap of faith as well. And we were very fortunate that the people, all the crew that was stood down on Batman, at that time, we got quite a few of the crew from there. Ben is a director and a producer, that our main producer on A Bird Flew In, and he knows a lot of people. So the amalgamation was like joining. It was almost like we were like a modern day family, that we were knitting together various families from the past, all together with some few new ones in as well. But I have to say, I've had experience over my career of crews working well together, not working well together. I've seen situations where the production department doesn't get on with the first AD and the ADs. I've seen all sorts. I've seen everything that worked really well, and I've seen everything work really, really badly. I have to say, I had to take my hat off to all of them. They worked super, super, super well together in very difficult conditions with lots of controls and you know, and a lot of things that they probably would never have done before, you know, all the testing, all the keeping away, the masks. And I know we're all used to it now, but nobody was used to it then. So we had you know, even my own street that I live in when I stay in London, we used all the houses in the street, you know, for our, not to stay in, to shoot each of our different characters out. So Derek Jacobi was isolating in France, and we were desperate to shoot him, you know, as our character David. So we had a bit of a jolly over to, and it was honestly like we were on a mission from Mission Impossible to either get ourselves there, and the hotel we stayed in was like the Mary-Celeste. It was bizarre, the bizarrest situation ever, and obviously we had to be rigorously tested, and Derek was just absolutely fantastic. So I have to say I had a fantastic experience, but it was in the most bizarrest of situations, and not the easiest, I have to say.
It's definitely interesting times to be making a movie, and for sure, as I saw very briefly, the production of the adaptation of a novel of mine made in Italy, actually during the pandemic. We originally were going to start filming at Cinecittà Studios in April of 2020, and then Italy went into lockdown, and then they opened up in September, like you were saying, Kirsty, in the UK. It was like they were open for a few weeks and then lockdown and then open for a few weeks. But because of the small size of an independent film crew, they were able to get in there in a way, actually, that Mission Impossible, literally, which was trying to be filmed in Italy at the time, was not able to get filmed. I don't know if they've subsequently finished filming, but at that time, an independent film was actually able to kind of get in there and in a 5.5 week shoot and do their work. But it was just wild. All the pieces you've got to pull together, all the flights you've got to arrange, everything that goes into that. It was a fascinating time. So can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges filming during a pandemic, and how that has made you a better director, a better producer, Kirsty?
It wasn't just the filming, Stacey, it was also the post-production, because we went into lockdown again. So it's like, how can I get this film finished? I can't sit with the editor. He's not in my bubble. He's not in this, I'm having to do everything over this machine. And, relying on the limited technology that I'm capable of using, as in from my own technical knowledge and also from a distance. So it was, and dealing with composers in a way like that, for the score, even the grade, we had to go through a complete rigmarole, things that you take absolutely for granted in a normal case of making a film. Just was, she would just make it a little bit harder for you. She would just push you that little bit further. Yeah, but what do you do? It's fight or flight, isn't it? And I suppose one of the things I've learned about how we managed to finish A Bird Flew In is really how the people in the film manage to cope with their lives. You get on. Well, you don't. You sink or swim, don't you? You make a choice. You do whatever you need to do. And we chose to do what we did, and we did it in the best way that we thought we could do it. Bearing in mind, we also decided to shoot entirely in black and white on antique lenses. It's just complicated up a little bit further. Shooting an actor on his own or her own, how do you get the best performance out of that? So, why don't you, Kirsty Bell, as a first-time director, make your directing journey the most difficult journey you could possibly make it? They've got nobody to act against. The only couple that are actually physically together in the film, we had to put into bubble. The ones that meet together, not to spoil anything, the hope of our movie, they had to go into a bubble. You're impacting on everybody's lives outside of what you're doing. But I've always regarded change and ability to deal with change a bit like eating an elephant. You can't eat an elephant whole. You've got to do it in chunks. So I think the biggest lesson that all of the team learned on A Bird Flew In was you've got to be adaptable. You've got to solution find. And I think as a producer, solution finding is your main skill set. I'm sure you would agree, Stacey, but you have to find solutions. You don't ever have a problem on set. You've only got the solution that you've got to find in the timeline that you do. So as a producer, I think I'm a lot more keyed into things that, different situations, not taking things for granted, or not taking people for granted, because a lot of the people who came to set were really scared. There were, you know, it was the first time some of them had come out of their own homes. So, you know, I didn't even understand that at the time. And as a director, I learned everything. I'd never been a director before. I've dealt with directors all my, you know, media career. But as a director, I found out I actually liked being looked after by the producer and the team. It was really nice. I didn't have to stand there and go, no, you can't have that. No, you can't have that. No, 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 no. It was, you know, this is my idea. Yes, you can do that. And it was like, oh my God, this is just incredible. People listening and actually understanding your vision and seeing these doodles on pieces of paper come alive on the screen was a fascinating process.
It truly is magical. So our panelists today, again, are Martha Tilston. She's the director of the tape. Kirsty Bell, who was just speaking, she's the producer director, most recently of A Bird Flew In, and Neil Mcenery-West, director of Asylum. My question to you, Martha, you mentioned that you studied acting in college. How does studying the craft of acting, how did that prepare you for directing and working with actors?
Oh, that's interesting. I just want to really quickly say that both your films sound absolutely amazing. I'm totally inspired. I just really want to get my teeth into them and see them. Well, it's just, I mean, I was mostly trained in theatre acting, which is a whole different thing, isn't it? Because you're always throwing out to the audience a little bit. Whereas with film acting, I really enjoyed how internal you could be and how every thought process comes across. I love that. But I did really enjoy the days, and I'd look at the call sheet and see that I wasn't acting, I was directing. I was just like, oh yes. I loved putting people together because I've been an actor. All the things that you can say to people that help them, like even just the extras who we literally grabbed off the street in Falmouth and put them into the cafe, and just suggesting like, oh, when the music comes on, this is where you remember you've always wanted to be a trapeze artist or whatever it is. I don't know, but just trying to sort of help. I loved it. I loved trying to, I guess, just remembering how it felt as an actor, having a really good director who comes in and just lets the motivation come from you, trusts you as an intelligent person, to hold the motivation and the drama of that scene and whatever your character's story is. But they just helped suggest a few little things that just kind of little like way markers, like little lanterns on the path. So just noticing that when I could do that for other actors, that was just really enjoyable. Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved directing. Yeah,
it's amazing.
Much more fun than acting.
Yeah, I can imagine so, especially coming from a theater background where you don't really see your performance, you're in the performance. And I would imagine it would be very different to act in film than where you're scrutinizing every gesture and every movement, in the editing.
Yeah, it's lovely though to see that work, because on stage you don't see it all. Mm-hmm. But to see that as every little thought changes and as you feel it, like to know that it's caught behind the eye, it was just like, oh, that was nice.
It's nice when it's not you. It's nice when it's the other actors that have to do that.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I mean, I've had a fair bit of, music videos and whatever. I'm kind of used to having a lens there. And I was chatting with my friend Carrie Trees, another singer, the other day. We were laughing about how, when we started out doing music, it was when everyone would come to gigs and like just film up your nose and then put it up on YouTube the next day. So like I've seen myself close up at every bad angle ever. So I'm okay with it.
So Neil, tell us a little bit about your process working with actors and what seemed to bring out the most authentic performances.
Well, it's not actually that dissimilar to what Martha was saying. So I studied drama before I went to film school. So I came originally from an acting background, which I love to do, but I do prefer directing. But I think because of that experience, I just really like working with actors because it's fun. It's like a playground, and you get to sort of, if you know the sort of language as well, and you can communicate with them. on a sort of in that sort of equal level, then it just means you can have lots of fun with sort of playing around with scenes and changing intentions and motivations and what have you. And yeah, and it was just really enjoyable. I mean, I guess for our one, the trickiest part, which is always a bit of a challenge as a director or an actor, is that so many of the scenes were just with the one character. So, you know, a lot of what was going on in terms of the conflict was very internal for the character. I know it was kind of struggling with that because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the time she had to play against someone who's unconscious. So there wasn't a huge amount of opportunity for interaction. And Tor, to her credit, who's our lead actress, she was just great. We had lots of time to sit down and talk here and there before the filming about who the character was, and what her trauma and her background was, and how that influenced everything that was happening. So I think that really helped, so that when we came to being on set, we just had kind of a shorthand, and it was much easier to work with that. And you know, again, a bit like Mother was just saying there, with the difference between acting and film and theatre, you know, she had so much she had to internalize, and so much that had to be seen through the eyes and through, you know, kind of peering into her soul rather than actually physically doing anything as sort of obviously outward gesture wise. So, you know, she was very good with stillness. She was very good with being still and being contained, which was really fun. But I love it. I love working with actors. I think it's the most fun. In fact, to be honest, I always find it frustrating on films because there's never enough time to do it. There's never enough time as a director to spend the time that you really want with the actors, and you're always pushed up against it. And you're also thinking about so many different things that I find that with everything I make, my biggest regret is always coming off of it not having just a little bit more time to play with the actors on set. I think that's the one thing I'd like to have more time to do, but you know, so would everyone.
And Kirsty, do you think you'll go back to producing now, or are you done with producing and you've found your passion with directing and having some do all that?
I'll do both. I know that I have a certain skill set to be a producer, and I like that, in the sense of, you know, the producer is a person who takes you from the very start to the very end, and you do everything in between. And a lot of people don't realize in filmmaking, especially people who don't come from that background, all the work that goes on before filming and all the work that goes on after. And it's a hell of a job, and the producer's the one who probably gets the least praise out of everybody, which is such a shame. And I mean, it is a hard job, and I do enjoy it. What I want to do is both. I fell in love with directing when I directed A Bird Flew In, and I've got several projects already lined up. I also acted in A Bird Flew In. I play the producer, Naomi. She's a girl who gets the film done, and I don't come from an acting background or drama school or anything. You know, I'm an ex-partner in a firm of accountants. You know, that's my background, and I found the dealing with that far easier than I thought I would. But going back to Neil and Martha's point, getting the performance out of the actors themselves as a director, I think, is an honour to do. Somebody who has decided to play the person that you doodled on a piece of paper in March and April, and we started filming on July the 13th. Somebody who wants to take that responsibility on of bringing your character to full life and trusts in your script and your vision. I think it was just awe-inspiring seeing some of the performances on that screen, especially from people like Sir Derek Jacobi and Jeff Fahey, who was immense in the film. And, you know, Camilla Rutherford is astonishing, playing the actress, an actress playing an actress, which must have been very difficult for her to understand. So yeah, I found it a truly inspiring process, to be honest with you.
The directors are Kirsty Bell. She's the director producer of A Bird Flew In, also acted in the film as a producer. I just learned Neil Mcenery-West, who's the director of Asylum, and Martha Tilston, director of The Tape. We're coming down to our last 10 minutes or so here. So if there are questions from the audience watching live, do try to get those in. If you're here in Tucson, Arizona in the US, we do have a reception this evening at the Hotel Congress, so please do come to that at 6 p.m. That'll be a lot of fun. I think the question that I want to ask, well, this is a bit of a selfish question, so bear with me. So I've just come off of my first adaptation of a novel of mine, seeing it all the way from novel to film. And once it was optioned and picked up, my role was very minimal. Although I did write the first draft of the screenplay. And I'm already looking at 2 additional novels that are in early talks, pre-production wise. I'm wondering if at some point I should get out from behind my writerly desk and actually direct a damn movie. What advice would you give for someone who has some experience? They know the business a little bit. What makes for a really great director? What are some of the skills? What are some of the character strengths? What are some of the things that make for a wonderful experience for everybody involved in a project? I'll start with Kirsty on that one.
Wow, big question, Stacey. I think if I were to give anyone advice, it would be to, if you feel that you have the capability to tell your story correctly on film, then you should do it. That's what my executive producer, my producer told me. You own it, as in you own it in your head and your heart. So if that's what you truly believe that you do, then you should, I don't know. My dad, when I was growing up, used to say, never say can't, you can try and fail. So why don't you try? So that would be my advice to you.
So, well, what kinds of skills, what kinds of character strengths make for a good director? Is it about
empathy, compassion for the actors and the roles that they have to play, patience, attention to detail, passion for what you are trying to tell the story of, and ability to listen. I think listening is key. Listening to your crew, trusting in your crew, and actually listening to what they're trying to show you, because a lot of them are far more experienced than you. My cinematographer, Sergio Delgado, was amazing. First AD, Jamie, was absolutely amazing. The whole crew were, but I listened to them because they've done this so many times. I haven't, they have. So that would be my advice.
I'm glad this is being recorded because I want to go back and blazon that into my brain. It's good advice for sure.
Thank you.
So how do you handle conflicts on set? If there's a disagreement between the way something should be shot or the way, you know, something should be lit or what have you, if there's a production design disagreement, what is your style of leadership in those kinds of instances when the stress is high and time is short?
That's what your producer's for, Stacey. Your producer's there to make sure the team, he's the puppeteer. So he's making sure the team all works correctly. And I think, unfortunately, it's a film business, there's lots of egos, isn't there? There's egos in the actors, there's egos in the crew, there's egos all over the shop. And I think I'm going to change my advice to you now. It's going to be leave your ego at the door, because your ego has no place on that set whatsoever. The producer's ego has no place. The cinematographer's ego has nobody's ego is welcome on that set. So it is, you know, if you want to create a family and a team and a positive experience that all three of us seem to have had through our filmmaking, then I would say is the biggest problem on filmmaking are the egos involved on the set.
And it seems like, and Martha, Neil, feel free to jump in on this. It seems like that kind of, in my mind, that goes back to what I was asking earlier, once you build a rapport, once you build trust with a team, especially if it's, you know, a core group of people that you're working with, then a lot of those things can work themselves out without too much static or drama, you know, it seems like to me.
I mean, we had, you know, there's always stuff that comes up. So like it was a family, but like a family, there's moments when you're kind of going, I want to do this like this, and oh, I don't want to do it like that. I do. There's of course those kind of moments, but definitely, I would say the main thing that happened for me that was really kind of has kind of changed how I look at lots of things now as well, is the idea of just being really flexible. Like the idea that it's always been this way. There was one conversation I had with someone in the crew that I was having a slightly tricky moment with, where they said, well, it's just got to run, you know, you haven't done this much before, Martha. It's got to run like an army. It's got to run like, it's got to run. And I was like, oh, right, okay. Why is that? What, like an army, it's quite male, isn't it? Like, how's that serving us and the planet at the moment? Like, is that like, well, you know, I don't like, let's not run it like an army. You know, like just the idea of like just looking at just this is how it's always been. I would say the advice, I don't know, I would give certainly is what, yeah, Kirsty said, just total from the heart. Absolutely trust it. If you've got a vision, you want to direct it, then you absolutely got to do it. And it will be as beautiful in your heart as your heart thinks it's going to be. But that idea of, especially if you haven't directed before, deferring to this kind of army model of how it's run, I don't know, I would say, yeah, keep fluid. And the nurturing vibe, I definitely felt like I had a nurturing thing. I was directing, and of course you're up against the time limit, but just trying to keep an eye on everyone's real life as well. These are all like, you know, mums and dads or people having a busy life. Yeah, just empathy as well, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I would say get a great first AD. That's so important, because the first AD, as much as the director, sets a tone on set, if not potentially more. And it's interesting what both Kirsty and Martha have been saying, like what Martha was just saying there about being told it was going to be kind of run like a military operation. I think you get all sorts of different first ADs working in film. You get some who really are like the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, and you get some which are sort of much more far too laid back and want to sort of make friends with everyone. And then you get some who are just these brilliant combinations of being someone that you'd love to go down and have a drink with in a pub at the end of the night, but also someone that you would never dare piss off. And if you can strike that balance between those two elements so that you're completely approachable, but also in some senses quite fierce if necessary, you know, then you can set a really good tone on set. And I think it keeps things moving, but it also allows there to be enough space for you to work, because also from an acting point of view, the last thing you want to do is feel that everyone is hurrying you along all the time. You want to feel like, you know, and as the director, I think your job is to create that kind of bubble so that you and the actors feel like you've almost got all the time in the world, even though obviously part of your job is to know what the schedule is and when you've got to move on, and to have that at the back of your mind. You've got to create that freedom of space for the actors, I think, as well. I just want to say one other thing, Stacey, on your first question, which was which I think Kirsty gave a really great response about, you know, with regards to, you know, what should I do if I want to kind of move over, what are the most important attributes and what have you for a director. I think if you're writing anyway, you know, you're in such a great position, because if you're the writer, you know the story inside and out, and all the director is really is, you know, their job is to look after the story. Their job is to tell the story. They've got amazing heads of departments to do all of the technical aspects of sort of, you know, setting up the lights, production design, the sound. Your job is to be the caretaker of the story. And I think if you're the writer, you're already in a great position to have so much information at your fingertips about who the characters are, about the world. And the last thing I would say on that is just, you know, this is just personally for me, the thing I found most useful directing when conflict arises, because it will, because as Kirsty and Martha were saying, you know, there are a lot of egos involved. The best way, I think, to diffuse that is to always make it about the story. So there should never be an argument on set about, you know, my idea is better than yours, or I don't want to do what you want to do. I want to do what I want to do. It should always just be about the story. So any disagreement you have, whether it be about production design or cinematography or whatever it is, you know, as the director, your job is to come down and say, well, what is best for the story? And you should, if you know the story well, you should be able to draw all of those arguments back to the story and back to the characters, so that it never has to be about, no, I don't really like that, or I prefer to do it my way. You know, as long as it's all about the story, then it's kind of hard for it to get really, really heated, because it kind of answers its own question, if that makes sense.
That's such a brilliant way of thinking of it, and rhetorically to bring it back to the story. And that's something I think we all can agree about when we're making a story, is what is this story trying to tell? What is this story?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of it? And does this shot, does this tonality, does the lighting in this, does it serve what we're trying to say in the story, right? It's really brilliant. And Kirsty, you know, to your point too, goodness, compassion and team building, and it's relationships. To me, it's about building relationships, and you find whether these are people that you can support, whether you want to support them, how you can support them, and hopefully it's somewhat mutual, you know, that it goes both ways. It's like a family in many ways, and there's so many things that go into nurturing that, from generosity and compassion and kindness to gratitude, to just appreciating the hard work and brilliance of other people. So much to take in, for sure.
Just one thought, just to add in the directing thing, we did something where we got some seashells and everyone had a shell and they put in their intention. We had a circle at the beginning. This is little moments like that, kind of creating, I say, if you're a director, create your own kind of little kind of rituals or something that mean that everyone's important. Everyone has a moment of like putting their intention in, or yeah, that was really special. I ended up wearing the necklace. My character wore the necklace with all the shells with all the wishes of all the crew on it. So little things like that.
Such a nice touch. Kirsty, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I know you're in Arizona, and I don't know whether rugby's very big over there in Arizona as a game, but if you look at a rugby team, and every single person is a different shape or size on a rugby team. It's one of the most unusual sports in the world, in that nobody looks the same as the other person, because they've all got different functions and different roles to play. And if you look how a manager of a rugby team manages that team and gets them all to work together to be successful, that's exactly what you have to do in filmmaking, because everybody is different. And some of the best business motivational speakers that I've ever heard in my life have come from the world of sport. We've got so much to learn about in team building and leadership from the world of sport. And, you know, I just feel that there are all shapes and sizes in filmmaking. So we should perhaps look to how we work better as teams to bring independent filmmaking. Stacey, is a very hard path to pick as either a producer, a director, or a financier. Yeah. And it's not easy. And nobody would ever pick it as a profession if they knew how hard it was. So, you know, let's all try and keep doing what we've, three of us and you as well, Stacey, want to do, you know, and build our teams that can continue us on into the future and help independent filmmaking, you know, be a success.
We've got a couple of questions from the audience. So I know we're right at 4 p.m. here, Arizona time. I know it's super late for y'all. Is it midnight there?
It's 3. It's
just 10.
2 a.m. here in Bulgaria.
I feel awful asking any more questions. We just need to go to bed now. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least ask this question that Julio, the founder of the Arizona International Film Festival, has asked. Kirsty, could you talk a little bit about your innovative financing model? And kind of along those lines too, you know, having come from that background and experience in accounting to then financing and producing, it sounds like, how do you recognize story? What are some of the ways that you found good stories that you are passionate about, previous to, of course, a bird flew in, but earlier in your career? What are the ways that stories have come to you?
We've since setting up Goldfinch, which is 8.5 years ago now, which is a bit mad because that seems like an awful long time ago. We've always had a very rigorous submissions process, and the reason why we did is because I didn't have anything of my own. I had to find stuff from everywhere else, and also we were brand new, so finding these pieces of gold dust was, you know, a lot of them were already financed, the ones that, you know, you'd want to pick. So I had to look for sort of, you know, the nuggets in the water, so to speak. And I tended to go for true stories, things based off truth, you know, stories that I could believe were real, whether they were real or not, I could believe were real. And if I could believe they were real, then other people, like the audience, we always forget there's an audience there, could believe that they're real. So if you looked at my IMDb, you'll see there's an awful lot of stories based off truth, documentaries. I love a documentary, you know, and also it's how the producer, when the producer's pitching it to me, whether they're financially aware, whether their business, you know, their business acumen is it doesn't have to be the best in the world, but it's got to be there at some point. You know, I've got to understand why is the budget always 5 million? You know, whenever you speak to a producer, the budget, why is it 5 million? A bit like what Martha was saying. Why does it have to be run on this military precision? You know, a budget should fit the film, the script of the film. That's what the budget should fit. And you know, it's like finding these amazing projects. One of my favorite ones, just very quickly, from the very start of Goldfinch, is a little film from a very small budget called My Feral Heart. If you've never watched it, watch it. It is done on beans and it is absolutely fantastic. There's a young Down syndrome actor who plays the lead, Brandon, and he is absolutely fantastic. And without me even knowing, it was a lady director called Jane Gull, who's great, and it was her first film. And I've always believed in offering opportunity to people if I can possibly help it. And for us to get, but we got asked to come in and help do some of the finance for this film. And the maths had to work because we're not a charity, you know, we're a business, but also the project had to work as well. And I think, without being a preachy kind of individual, I think the marriage of show and business is super, super important. And that's what makes me tick as a producer as well as the creative. And I think if we can educate more people who wish to become producers in that side of the business, I think a lot more films will get made more quickly for the right money and get sold for the right money too. End of sermon.
Totally agree. You're preaching to the choir here. The last question, and then let's all go to sleep. Or me, I'm going to be going to the Hotel Congress and getting a few drinks. So what's next for you as filmmakers and films? It sounded like I heard, maybe it was Martha, you were saying you were starting to work on a new film, or did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I'm really excited about yeah, people were sort of asking when you can do another one, and I wasn't feeling it. It's like I've just learnt with songs or anything creative, I just have to wait until it comes. If I try and force a song, it always sounds terrible or anything, you know. So I was just nothing was coming, and then this idea just came in like a flood, and I cannot stop thinking about it. So I know it's like it's the one. In fact, I just feel like, and the yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but the more, certainly the more, it just feels like the right time for this one. I really, yeah. So I'm just just starting on it now, and having a lot of my heart just feels very alive with it. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
And that's one of the most exciting times, right? When the idea is there and it's like, it's cooking.
Best, it beats anything, doesn't it? Because it's all in. I mean, it's another reason why I was thinking earlier, you saying you write and you want to direct. Definitely, from like, we've all done this. We've had the idea in our heads, all of us here, and then we've got to be the one who it's just like the best present ever to be the one who then makes it from your head out. yeah, so I'm just at the point now where I'm playing it in my head and I'm loving it. So that's where I'm at.
So
and hopefully
inspiring.
it'll come to you soon.
That's so inspiring. Neil, how about you?
So I'm writing a sort of feature-length version of Asylum, actually, which is a bigger story, but it's sort of about the same characters with a few extra characters, but it's a sort of that was always the intention. This was kind of just something to kind of help create the world. But the other thing that I'm doing, which I'm really excited about, is I'm working with another writer called David Lemon, who I've worked with before. We worked together on a feature film a few years back, which he wrote and I directed. And he and I are working on another film, which is kind of a science fiction / thriller, which is all set in this weird kind of brutalist institute in this kind of anachronistic world of the 1970s, but also the sort of 21st century. And it's really just it's almost like a two-hander for a lot of it. It's about a woman that's receiving treatment for what she thinks is kind of trauma, but it turns out to be something far more insidious. So that's going to be a fun one. That we're kind of throwing everything at that one at the moment. So yeah, so lots of stuff to work on at the moment. It's a busy time, but fun time.
So exciting. And Kirsty?
We've got quite a lot coming up. So I'm producing a few films for the rest of the year. And before the year, I'm also directing a documentary, which we're announcing in just pre-Cannes, which when it is announced, you probably think it's quite unusual for me to do. And also working on 2 thrillers at the moment, which one is a story that I found in the eaves of an attic, would you believe? It was delivered like a present out of the eaves of an attic.
Tell us that story. So how did that come about? Fascinating.
Where I really live is in the northeast of England. I don't live in Bulgaria. I live in the northeast of England, and a very old house, and it needed an awful lot of work done to it. And I had an office downstairs. This is 2008, and my husband came running into my office and went, "You'll never guess what I found in the eaves of the attic of the house." And I went, "No, tell me." And he said, "I found this, and it's the diary of a young man who lived in the house, and it is the most amazing story, real story." And it's dated the 1st of September 1945, the day before peace was declared in World War II. And it concludes, I know, it's just that so anyway, I didn't make films then. I financed a few and advised a lot of media businesses then, but I definitely didn't produce or anything like that. So moved down to London, and it was put in a storage box. Long story short, 3 weeks ago, I decided to try and sort out the storage boxes from all those years ago. And I found the diary, and it is literally reads like a film. It literally just needs nothing done to it other than putting the visuals on it. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Well, if you need a writer for the project, feel free to reach out to me.
If you could type it up, that would be great, Stacey. It's a bit of a bind.
I would be honored. Well, for all of us here at the 30th, and it's hard to believe, 30 years. Julia, I wonder how you feel about that. Hopefully we'll have some drinks tonight at Hotel Congress and talk about that. But for all of us here at the 30th annual Arizona International Film Festival, I'm absolutely grateful and honored to have spent this time with some outstanding filmmakers and producers and creatives. Martha Tilston is the director of The Tape. Kirsty Bell is the producer director of A Bird Flew In, and Neil Mcenery-West is the director of Asylum. We should all get together again, maybe via Zoom in a few weeks or a few months or something like that, because it seems like whoever put this panel together was thinking of like-minded individuals for sure. So
Well, thank you very much,
Yeah.
Stacey. Honestly, it's been an honour and a privilege. So thank you.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Stacey, so much.
Yeah,
Really lovely to
thank
meet
you.
you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much to you, Stacey, and to the festival as well. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
totally.
Now to bed. To bed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.